Hey guys, so I am back with another part of my Widowmaker work log video series. This time I am working on her Gauntlet, and to start off the video I am just cutting out the patterns I drew up for her. These patterns are available on my Patreon page once you pledge a certain tier. There's more information on that linked down below. Now I am just tracing out all those patterns onto EVA foam and cutting that out. Once those are all cut out, I go ahead and take my Dremel and sand all the individual pieces down to smooth out the edges before hot gluing them all together, which you will see in a little bit. To help shape everything, I just use a heat gun and form it around my arm. And here's the part that I mentioned where I'm just hot gluing everything together. I kind of trim up the edges just using scissors as I go along to try to keep things as in the right place as possible. So here I'm making the two things that go on her gauntlet. I'm using a thinner piece of EVA foam to make them, and I cut out two little strips, cut that down to a point, and then I use a Dremel to sand it to make the little points that she has coming out of those tubes. Something I would do differently is not coat them in wood glue. I would just get them in the right color of craft foam that I needed, and then leave it as is. Coating it in wood glue made it so that they broke at like a midpoint, which is why I don't have them in a lot of my photos. And you'll see in the video, I stick a hole into the little tubes itself using scissors to make it so that they wouldn't just snap off if they hit something. And when they were left just as foam with no sort of coating, that's exactly what they did, is just stay in place and bend if they got hit on anything. But once I coated them in wood glue, it made it just snap off, even like not from the point it was stuck in, just in the middle. So they eventually broke off. Now I'm just gluing those tubes into place using hot glue, and a lot of it. I need you to listen, I need you to hear, and don't show here I'm just using a Dremel and going around the edges and sanding out the last parts that needed to be sanded down. Once everything was how I wanted it, I went ahead and started coating it in wood glue. I think I coated it in about 3 coats of wood glue to start. Then to fill up some of the seam lines, as you will see in a few minutes, and this will be only a few minutes, but like a few seconds, but you know, you'll see soon that I use Bondo to fill in the seam lines and sand that down, and then do about 2 more coats of wood glue. So here's the Bondo part. I'm using Bondo's cap filler, or something like that. It comes in a little tube. You can find it at quite a few different stores, mostly like auto stores. And once that dries, I just use fine grit sandpaper and sand it down to make sure everything's smooth, and it helps fill in the seam lines that I don't want to show.
From London to Taiwan, I've been all around the globe trying to protect your soul. I'm walking alone, streets.
Once it's spray painted to the color I wanted it, which I will admit isn't a much different grade, but I spray painted it anyways. I'm taking acrylic paint here though to make the kind of distressed and scratch marks that she has on her gauntlet. For this, I just looked at the reference photos given to us by Blizzard, that little reference kit thing they have for cosplayers, and that's what I'm going off of to figure out the placement for all these lighter gray markings. So part of her little tube things have a black color to it, or not have a black color to it, but it is a black color. So I'm just taking acrylic paint and painting the areas that are supposed to be black. But I am not using acrylic paint to shade it. I use oil paint to shade it because that's much more easier to blend and creates a lot more of like a natural shadow look. So to make that little purple tube that she has on her bracer, gauntlet, whatever you want to call it, I took a folder, like this transparent folder or thing that lives in like a binder as a separator, cut that out, made it like into a tube, glued it together, put a hole in the back for the light to poke through, put a little piece of EVA foam on either end, cut in a circle so that I kept it shaped and was closed, as well as shoved in some kind of sheer, like, flowy fabric to make it look, not like it necessarily had liquid in it, but it looks like she does have something in that tube, because I believe that is, like, her poison. So that is what I tried to create an effect of by shoving in the fabric. I also took thin strips of EVA foam and placed them at each, not necessarily a corner, but like to kind of look like it's a corner, because she does have her little strips that go all the way around the tube. Once I attached that purple tube, I didn't like how it looked in comparison to the rest of the gauntlet because it was missing that covering piece, so I went ahead and added that by cutting a rectangle strip of a thinner piece of craft foam, then sanding it down to blend it in with the existing gauntlet, coated that with wood glue, painted it to catch up with where the rest of the gauntlet was, and here I'm just painting the strips of EVA foam on the purple tube black to create the textured piece on the back of the gauntlet, which you can kind of see in some clips. I just used the fabric that I have been using from Yayohan's line in a lot of her pieces, like the shoulder piece, and glued that into place. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope this video was somewhat helpful. I will be back with more videos of my Widowmaker work log, and there have already been some posted, so check that out. Have a lovely day. Goodbye.